Dr. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished stitching up another mining accident victim. The small medical clinic on Kepler 442b never seemed to have a quiet day. Outside the reinforced windows, the twin suns cast strange purple shadows across the rocky landscape of New Hokkaido settlement. "Dad, the supply transport is coming in early," called a voice from the reception area. Marcus smiled at the sound. Even after 23 years, hearing Lila call him Dad still warmed his heart. Lila walked into the treatment room, her silver-blue skin catching the artificial light. She stood nearly 6 feet tall with graceful movements that seemed almost too fluid for a human settlement. Her large dark eyes held flecks of gold that seemed to shift when she was thinking. Marcus had long ago stopped trying to guess what species she belonged to. "How early?" Marcus asked, disposing of his gloves. "About 2 hours, Mrs. Patterson. Wants to know if we need anything." "Special ordered for next month." Lila's voice carried a slight musical quality that made even mundane conversation sound pleasant. Marcus nodded and began cleaning his instruments. 23 years ago, he had been a young doctor fresh out of medical school, assigned to this frontier world because he wanted adventure. He got more than he bargained for when he found an escape pod crashed in the western canyons during a routine survey mission. Inside that pod was a baby who couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Her skin was already showing the distinctive silver-blue color, and her eyes held an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for an infant. The pod's systems were completely foreign, made of materials he had never seen before. Most of the technology was damaged beyond repair, but the life support had kept the baby safe. Marcus had reported the find to the colonial authorities, but with no way to identify the child's species or origin, they told him to care for her until someone claimed her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. No one ever came. "Dad, you're doing that thing again," Lila said, leaning against the doorframe. "What thing?" "The thing where you stare at your hands and think about old stuff. Your emotions get all cloudy when you do that." Marcus paused in his cleaning. Lila had always been able to sense emotions. As a child, she would comfort crying patients before they even spoke. She claimed she could feel what others were feeling, though she couldn't read minds. It was just one of the many ways she was different. "Just thinking about how fast you've grown up," Marcus said truthfully. Lila walked over and hugged him. Even though she was taller than him now, she still hugged him like she was that scared little girl who used to hide behind his legs when strangers visited. "I know you worry about me," she said softly, "about what I am, where I came from. But this is my home. You're my family. That's all that matters." Marcus hugged her back, but his heart was heavy. He had always known this day might come. Somewhere in the galaxy, Lila's real family might be looking for her. He had raised her to be strong and independent, but part of him dreaded the day someone would take her away. The communication console in the corner began beeping urgently. Marcus frowned. The emergency frequency was only used for serious problems. "Dr. Chen, this is Colonial Command," came a tense voice. "We need you to report to the main communication center immediately. Bring Lila with you." Marcus and Lila exchanged worried glances. In 23 years, Colonial Command had never specifically asked for Lila. "What do you think this is about?" Lila asked as they walked through the dusty streets toward the command center. "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but I have a feeling our quiet life is about to change." The command center was buzzing with activity. Colonel Hayes, the settlement's military commander, met them at the entrance. His face was pale, and his usual confident demeanor was nowhere to be seen. "Doc, Lila, thank you for coming so quickly," he said, leading them to the main communication room. "We've received a transmission that, well, you need to see it for yourself." The main screen flickered to life, showing the view from one of the orbital monitoring stations. In the distance, something massive was approaching. It wasn't like any human ship Marcus had ever seen. The vessel was organic in appearance, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own light. It was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human starship. "They sent a message," Colonel Hayes said, his voice tight. "It's been translated by the computer, but the language patterns are unlike anything in our databases." The screen changed to show a figure that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. It was clearly the same species as Lila, but larger and more imposing. The being stood nearly 9 feet tall, with natural armor plating covering her silver-blue skin. Her eyes glowed with an inner light, and when she spoke, her voice carried an authority that seemed to fill the room. I am Queen Veltara of the Zephyrian Empire, the figure said. I have come to reclaim my daughter, Princess Lysandra, who was lost to me 23 years ago. My scouts have reported a being of our kind living among humans in this system. I demand she be returned to me immediately. The transmission ended, leaving the room in complete silence. Marcus felt like the ground had dropped out from under him. Beside him, Lila stood frozen, her golden eyes wide with shock. Lila, Colonel Hayes said gently. Is there anything you want to tell us? Lila shook her head slowly. I don't remember anything from before Dad found me. I was just a baby. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. How long until they arrive? He asked. About 6 hours, Colonel Hayes replied. Doc, I have to ask. Did you know about this? About what she might be? I knew she wasn't human, Marcus said firmly. But I had no idea she was royalty. She's been my daughter for 23 years. That's not going to change. Lila looked up at him with tears in her eyes. What if they're right? What if I really am this princess? What if I have to leave? Marcus took her hands in his. They were shaking. Listen to me, Lila. I don't care if you're a princess, a queen, or the ruler of the entire galaxy. You're my daughter. We'll face this together, whatever comes. Colonel Hayes cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to prepare. This Queen Veltara commands an empire that spans multiple star systems. If we handle this wrong, it could mean war for all of humanity. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. In a few hours, his quiet life as a frontier doctor would be over forever. Someone was coming to take away the person he loved most in the universe. But as he looked at Lila, he saw something that gave him hope. Despite her shock and fear, there was also determination in her eyes. She had grown up human with human values. Whatever royal blood might flow in her veins, she was still the girl who helped injured miners and comforted scared children. We'll meet them when they arrive, Marcus said finally. All of us together. Outside, the twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the settlement. Somewhere in the darkness above, a queen was coming to reclaim her lost daughter. But Marcus Chen had spent 23 years raising that daughter, and he wasn't going to give her up without a fight. The heart spire blocked out the stars. Marcus stood on the landing platform with Lila beside him, watching the massive alien ship descend toward New Hokkaido. The vessel was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its organic curves pulsed with soft blue light, and smaller ships moved around it like fish swimming around a whale. I can feel them, Lila whispered, her hand gripping Marcus's arm. So many minds, all connected somehow. And there's one that's stronger than the others, much stronger. That would be your mother, Marcus said gently. Lila flinched at the word. You're my father. You raised me. She's just someone who shares my blood. Marcus squeezed her hand. Around them, the entire population of New Hokkaido had gathered to witness the arrival. Colonial Marines stood at attention, their weapons clearly visible but not raised. Everyone understood the delicate nature of this moment. The main landing craft that detached from the Heartspire was itself larger than most human ships. It touched down with barely a whisper, its organic hull seeming to merge with the landing platform. An opening appeared in its side, growing like a flower blooming in fast motion. Queen Veltara emerged first. She was everything the transmission had suggested and more. Standing over 9 feet tall, she moved with fluid grace despite her imposing size. Her silver blue skin was covered in natural armor plating that looked both beautiful and deadly. Her eyes glowed with an inner fire that Marcus could feel even from a distance. Behind her came a group of advisors, all tall and elegant, but none approaching the Queen's presence. They looked at the gathered humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed disgust. The Queen's gaze swept across the crowd until it found Lila. She stopped walking, and for a moment her composed expression cracked. Marcus saw naked joy and pain flash across her features. Lysandra, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the platform despite being barely above a whisper. My daughter. Lila stepped forward but stayed close to Marcus. My name is Lila, she said firmly. Lila Chen. The Queen's expression hardened slightly. You are Princess Lysandra, heir to the Zephyrian throne, daughter of Queen Veltara. These humans may have given you another name, but they cannot change what you are. They didn't give me another name, Lila replied. They gave me a life, a family, a home. One of the Queen's advisors, a tall male with intricate markings on his armor, stepped forward. Your Majesty, the princess has clearly been influenced by prolonged exposure to these primitives. With proper treatment, she can be restored to her true self. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Lila hasn't been influenced by anyone. She's grown up to be exactly who she chose to be. The advisor looked at Marcus as if he were an insect that had just spoken. And you are? Dr. Marcus Chen, Lila's father. Impossible, the advisor scoffed. The princess has no human parentage. You are merely the keeper who found her. The Queen held up a hand for silence. She walked closer to Lila, her glowing eyes studying every detail of her daughter's face. You have grown beautiful, my daughter, and strong. I can feel your power even now, barely contained. What power? Lila asked. The same power that runs through all of royal blood. The ability to touch minds, to influence others, to command with thought alone. The Queen's voice was gentle now, almost pleading. Come home with me, Lysandra. Take your place as heir to an empire that spans 12-star systems. Rule beside me as you were born to do. Lila was quiet for a long moment. Marcus could feel the conflict radiating from her. Part of her was clearly drawn to the idea of knowing where she came from, of understanding her heritage. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. I already have a place, she said. Here, with my father. The Queen's face darkened. This human is not your father. He is nothing more than a caretaker who happened to find you. I am your mother. My blood flows in your veins. My empire is your birthright. Your blood might flow in my veins, Lila said, but his love flows in my heart. He didn't just find me and keep me alive. He raised me. He taught me right from wrong. He was there for every nightmare, every scraped knee, every moment of doubt. That makes him my father in every way that matters. The advisor who had spoken before made a sound of disgust. Your Majesty, surely you can see that the princess has been corrupted by these inferior beings. She speaks of emotion as if it were more important than duty and bloodline. Marcus had heard enough. He stepped forward, moving protectively in front of Lila. The only thing inferior here is your understanding of what makes a family. The advisor's eyes flashed dangerously. How dare you address your betters, human? Do you have any idea what we could do to your pathetic little world? I know exactly what you could do, Marcus said calmly. The question is whether that's the kind of people you want to be, the kind of mother you want to be, he added, looking directly at the Queen. Queen Veltara studied Marcus with new interest. You speak boldly for someone so outmatched. I speak honestly. Lila is 23 years old. She's an adult who can make her own choices. If you truly care about her, you'll respect those choices. I am offering her an empire, the Queen said. What can you possibly offer that compares to that? Love without conditions, Marcus replied immediately. A family that accepts her for who she is, not what she's supposed to be. The freedom to choose her own path. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Around them, the tension was thick enough to cut. Marcus could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes watching this exchange that could determine the fate of both worlds. You would keep my daughter from her. Destiny, the Queen said finally. I would let my daughter choose her own destiny, Marcus corrected. Lila stepped up beside Marcus, taking his hand. I choose to stay here. This is my home. These are my people. I won't abandon them for a crown I never asked for. The Queen's composure finally cracked. You don't understand what you're giving up. The power, the responsibility, the chance to shape the galaxy itself. I understand perfectly, Lila said sadly. But power without love is just tyranny. I'd rather be a doctor's daughter who helps people than an empress who rules through fear. The Queen stared at her daughter for a long moment, pain clear in her glowing eyes. Then she turned to her advisors. Prepare quarters on the ship. We will remain here for 3 days. Perhaps the princess will reconsider when she understands the full scope of what she's rejecting. As the Zephyrian delegation returned to their ship, Marcus put his arm around Lila's shoulders. She was trembling slightly, and he could feel the emotional toll the encounter had taken on her. Are you okay? He asked quietly. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to know more about where I came from, about what I could become, but a bigger part of me just wants to go home and pretend this never happened. Marcus looked up at the massive alien ship hanging in the sky above them. Something tells me that's not going to be an option. Lila followed his gaze. What do you think she'll do? I think, Marcus said slowly. That we're about to find out just how far a mother will go to get her daughter back. Marcus woke to the sound of glass breaking. He rolled out of bed, immediately alert. After 2 days of tension with the Zephyrian ship hanging over New Hokkaido like a sword, everyone was on edge. But this sounded different, deliberate. Lila? He called out, moving toward her room. No answer. He found her bedroom window shattered, the night air streaming in through the broken frame. Signs of a struggle were everywhere. Overturned furniture, claw marks in the walls, and drops of silver-blue blood on the floor. Marcus's heart raced as he activated his emergency communicator. This is Dr. Chen. Lila's been taken. I repeat, Lila has been taken. Within minutes, Colonial Marines surrounded the house. Colonel Hayes arrived soon after, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. Any idea who did this? Hayes asked. Has to be someone from the Queen's ship, Marcus said, examining the claw marks. But why would they take her by force? The Queen wants Lila to come willingly. Maybe the Queen doesn't know about this, Hayes suggested. Before Marcus could respond, his communicator crackled to life. Dr. Chen, this is the Heartspire. Queen Veltara requests your immediate presence aboard our vessel. Come alone. Marcus looked at Hayes, who shook his head. It's obviously a trap, Doc. Maybe, Marcus said, checking his medical bag. But if there's any chance Lila is hurt, I have to go. The transport to the Heartspire was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The small craft seemed to be grown rather than built, its walls pulsing gently like a living thing. When they docked, the airlock opened to reveal corridors that curved and flowed like the inside of a seashell. Queen Veltara met him in what appeared to be a throne room, though it looked more like the inside of a vast organic cathedral. She was pacing, her usual composure completely gone. When she saw Marcus, relief flooded her features. Dr. Chen, thank the ancestors you came quickly. My daughter is in grave danger. Where is she? Marcus demanded. Safe for now, but not for long. The Queen gestured to a wall that suddenly became transparent, showing a view of space. There are those among my advisors who believe that your influence over Lysandra must be permanently removed. Marcus felt cold dread settle in his stomach. You're talking about assassination. Commander Thexvar believes that once you are dead, the princess will accept her role without further resistance. He has taken it upon himself to solve what he sees as a problem. And you're just going to let him kill me? The Queen's eyes flashed with anger. I am not letting him do anything. Thexvar has acted without my knowledge or permission. When I discovered his plan, I had you brought here for your own protection. What about Lila? She fought them when they came for you. Thexvar had to take her to prevent her from warning you. The Queen's voice was tight with emotion. She was protecting you. Her power manifested fully for the first time, and she nearly killed 3 of my guards trying to reach you. Marcus stared at the Queen. She has powers. All of royal blood can touch minds, influence thoughts, move objects with will alone. But Lysandra's power is stronger than mine was at her age. Much stronger. The Queen turned to face him fully. She was using that power to protect you, Dr. Chen. A human. That should be impossible. Why should it be impossible? Because Zephyrian power only responds to protecting those we consider family. True family. Bonded by blood and spirit. The Queen's voice was barely above a whisper. She truly sees you as her father. Marcus felt something shift in the Queen's tone. That surprises you. It terrifies me, she admitted. I came here expecting to find my daughter being held by primitives who had brainwashed her. Instead, I find her defending someone she loves with power I can barely comprehend. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Your Majesty, came a voice. Commander Thexvar is requesting an audience. Send him in, the Queen said, her expression hardening. Commander Thexvar entered the chamber with 4 guards. He was taller than the other Zephyrians Marcus had seen, with darker armor and scars that spoke of many battles. His eyes fixed on Marcus with undisguised hatred. Your Majesty, why is this human still alive? I specifically ordered his elimination. You ordered nothing, the Queen said coldly. You took actions without my consent and kidnapped my daughter in the process. I solved a problem that was preventing the princess from accepting her destiny. Once the human is dead, she will see reason. Marcus stepped forward. She'll see that you murdered her father. Is that really how you want to start your relationship with her? Thexvar laughed harshly. You are not her father, human. You are a parasite that has attached itself to royal blood. Then why did her power manifest to protect me? Marcus asked. According to your queen, that only happens when protecting true family. Thexvar's expression darkened. The princess has been corrupted by human sentiment. It will pass. No, came a new voice from the chamber entrance. It won't. Lila walked in, flanked by 2 more guards. Her silver-blue skin was marked with bruises, and there was dried blood at the corner of her mouth. But her eyes blazed with fury, and the air around her seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Daughter, the queen breathed. Hello, mother, Lila said, her voice tight with anger. I see you've met my father. I trust Commander Thexvar explained why he felt it necessary to beat me unconscious to prevent me from protecting him. Thexvar straightened. Princess, I did what was necessary to what? Lila's voice rose, and the guards around her took an involuntary step back. To prove that Zephyrian royalty solves problems through violence? To show me the kind of empire I would inherit? The queen stepped between them. Lysandra, Thexvar acted without my knowledge. I would never have approved, but you didn't stop him either, Lila interrupted. When push came to shove, you let your people threaten the man who raised me. Marcus moved to Lila's side, ignoring the weapons pointed at him. Are you hurt? I'm fine, Dad. Lila's voice softened as she looked at him. Just angry. The princess needs to understand, Thexvar said, that her emotional attachment to this human is a weakness that our enemies will exploit. My emotional attachment to this human, Lila said, turning back to face him, is the strongest thing about me. It's what gives me purpose, meaning, direction. Without it, I'm just another person with power. The queen was staring at her daughter with a mixture of awe and confusion. I don't understand. How can you choose him over everything I'm offering you? Lila looked at her mother with sad eyes. Because he chose me first. When I was just a baby with no name and no past, he chose to love me. Not because of what I might become, but because of who I was in that moment. That's what real family does. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. After 23 years, hearing Lila articulate why she wanted to stay still moved him deeply. Your Majesty, came another voice over the communication system. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching from Galactic South. Unknown configuration, but massive energy signatures. The queen's face went pale. Devourers, she whispered. What are devourers? Marcus asked. Ancient machines that consume entire worlds, Thexvar said grimly. They haven't been seen in this sector for over a century. The queen moved to a control panel, and the transparent wall showed space around them. In the distance, dark shapes were moving against the stars. Even at this distance, Marcus could see they were enormous. How long until they reached the inhabited worlds? The queen asked. 18 hours to reach human space. 24 to reach our border systems. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They're heading for Earth first, the queen nodded grimly. The outer worlds always fall first. We will need to evacuate our border systems and prepare defenses at the core worlds. What about the humans? Lila asked. Thexvar shrugged. They are not our responsibility. The chamber fell silent. Marcus looked at the approaching dark shapes and felt the weight of billions of lives hanging in the balance. There has to be something we can do, he said. The devourers have never been stopped, the queen said sadly. Only survived. But Marcus was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. What if we're thinking about this wrong? What if instead of trying to stop them, we find a way to confuse them? Lila looked at him with sudden hope. Dad, what are you thinking? Marcus smiled grimly. I'm thinking it's time to show the galaxy what humans do best. You want to do what? Commander Thexvar stared at Marcus as if he had lost his mind. Form a joint defense, Marcus repeated calmly. Combine human tactics with Zephyrian technology. It's our only chance. They were gathered in the Heartspire's command center, a vast organic chamber filled with flowing control surfaces and holographic displays. The approaching Devourer fleet showed as red dots on the main screen, growing larger with each passing hour. Humans have no psychic abilities, no advanced technology, no experience fighting Devourers, Thexvar continued. What could they possibly contribute? Unpredictability, Marcus said. Every report I've heard about Devourers mentions that they adapt quickly to standard military tactics. But humans don't use standard tactics. We improvise. Queen Veltara studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Our traditional response is to fall back to fortified positions and make them pay for every world they take. But with humans directly in their path, millions will die, Lila finished quietly. People I've known my whole life. People who helped raise me. Marcus moved to the main display, pointing at the fleet formations. Look at how they move. Perfect formation, optimal spacing, calculated for maximum efficiency. They're machines, which means they think like machines. And? Thexvar asked impatiently. Machines hate chaos. They can't process true randomness. Marcus turned to face the assembled Zephyrian commanders. What if we gave them something they couldn't calculate? Queen Veltara leaned forward with interest. Explain. Human pilots don't fly in perfect formation. We take risks, make split-second decisions based on instinct rather than calculation. If we could coordinate that chaos with your psychic network— Impossible, another commander interrupted. Humans cannot interface with our neural networks. But I can, Lila said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. I was raised human, but I have Zephyrian abilities. I could be the bridge between both systems. Thexvar shook his head. Princess, you've never commanded a battle fleet. This would require coordination beyond anything you've attempted. Then teach me, Lila said firmly. We have 18 hours. Use them. Marcus felt a surge of pride watching his daughter take charge. But the Queen looked troubled. Even if this plan could work, Queen Veltara said, it would require humans and Zephyrians to fight side by side. My people view humans as primitive. Your people fear us as conquerors. How do we overcome centuries of mutual suspicion in a matter of hours? By giving them something bigger to worry about, Marcus said. Sometimes the only way to build trust is to put people in a situation where they have to depend on each other. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus found himself shuttling between the human colonial fleet and the Zephyrian command ship, helping to coordinate the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. The human pilots were skeptical at first. You want us to fly with the aliens? Captain Sarah Torres of the UES Defiant asked. Doc, no offense, but these people could destroy our entire fleet without breaking a sweat. They could, Marcus agreed. But they need us too. Our ships are smaller, faster, and harder to predict. We can get in close where their big ships can't follow. Meanwhile, aboard the Heartspire, Lila was working with Zephyrian technicians to modify their neural interface systems. Marcus watched her through the observation window, amazed at how quickly she was adapting to technology she had never seen before. She is remarkable, Queen Veltara said, joining him at the window. In hours she has mastered systems that take our own people years to understand. She's had good teachers, Marcus replied. Human teachers, the Queen said quietly. I am beginning to understand that perhaps there is value in your methods that I did not recognize. Commander Thexvar approached with a tactical report. The Devourers will reach the outer human colonies in 6 hours. Our combined fleet is in position, but— He hesitated. But what? Marcus asked. The energy readings from the Devourer ships are beyond anything in our records. Even with our combined forces, we may not have enough firepower to stop them. Marcus studied the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was massive. Dozens of ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb light, making them difficult to track visually. Maybe we don't need to stop them, he said slowly. Maybe we just need to confuse them long enough to hurt them. Explain, the Queen said. Look at their formation. They're staying in perfect geometric patterns even as they travel. What if we could break those patterns? Force them to adapt to something they can't predict? Lila's voice came over the intercom. Dad, I think I've got something. Can you come to the interface chamber? Marcus hurried to where Lila was working. She was surrounded by holographic displays showing ship movements and neural network patterns. Her eyes glowed with the same inner light as her mother's, but softer somehow. I've been studying human and Zephyrian tactical databases, she said excitedly. Look at this. She gestured and the display showed battle formations. Zephyrian tactics are based on coordination and overwhelming force. Human tactics are based on flexibility and surprise. But what if we combine them? She manipulated the display, showing mixed formations of human and Zephyrian ships. Small human fighters coordinated by Zephyrian psychic networks, but given freedom to improvise within the overall strategy. The Devourers would see organized resistance, but when they adapt to counter it, the human elements would change unpredictably. Marcus stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. It could work. The question is whether our people can trust each other enough to pull it off. They'll have to, Queen Veltara said from the doorway. Long-range sensors show the Devourers have increased speed. They'll reach human space in 4 hours. The final preparations were tense. Human and Zephyrian ships formed mixed squadrons for the first time in history. Marcus found himself aboard a human fighter, flying alongside vessels that looked like living creatures made of light. Lila was in the command center of the Heartspire, her consciousness linked to both fleets through the modified neural interface. Marcus could hear her voice in his headset, calm and confident despite the enormous responsibility she carried. "All ships, this is Princess Lysandra," she announced. "I know this is new for all of us. Humans flying with Zephyrians, Zephyrians trusting human judgment. But today we're not different species. We're all defenders of our homes." Through the view screen, Marcus could see the first Devourer ships emerging from hyperspace. They were even more intimidating in person. Massive dark shapes that seemed to bend light around them. Energy readings spiked as they began powering up their weapons. "Remember," Lila continued, "I'll coordinate overall strategy through the Zephyrian network. But human pilots have full discretion for individual tactics. Trust your instincts. That's what makes you dangerous." The lead Devourer ship fired a beam of crimson energy that could have destroyed a city. It missed the fleet by mere kilometers. "All ships," Marcus heard Lila say, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Engage the enemy." The battle for both their worlds was about to begin. Marcus gripped his controls tighter as his fighter accelerated toward the approaching darkness. Behind him, the combined fleet followed. Human and Zephyrian ships moving together in patterns that had never been tried before. "Here we go," he muttered to himself, then louder into his comm unit. "This is for everyone who ever said humans don't belong among the stars." The first wave of Devourer fighters moved like a dark cloud across space, their formations perfect and deadly. Marcus watched them approach through his fighter's view screen, his hands steady on the controls despite the fear coursing through him. "All human squadrons. Remember the plan," Lila's voice came through the neural link, somehow reaching both human communication systems and Zephyrian psychic networks simultaneously. "Hit and run tactics. Don't try to match their firepower. Use your speed and unpredictability." Marcus dove his fighter toward the nearest Devourer ship, a massive construct that looked like it was made of crystallized darkness. Beside him, Captain Torres and her fighter followed a completely different approach angle. Behind them, Zephyrian ships provided covering fire with weapons that painted space in brilliant colors. The Devourers fired in calculated volleys, their targeting systems trying to predict where the human ships would be. But human pilots didn't fly by calculation. Marcus pulled his fighter into a spiraling dive that no computer would ever choose, avoiding 3 different targeting locks in the process. "It's working," Torres shouted over the comm. "They can't get a solid lock on us." But the victory was short-lived. The Devourer ships began adapting, their targeting becoming more random, less predictable. Within minutes, they were firing spread patterns that covered entire areas of space. "Lila," Marcus called out, "they're learning. We need the next phase." "Already on it, Dad," Lila's voice replied. "All Zephyrian ships begin psychic coordination protocol. Human ships prepare for linked maneuvers." What happened next was something Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. Through the neural link, he could suddenly feel the presence of every other pilot in the fleet. Not their thoughts exactly, but their intentions, their movements, their tactical instincts. It was like being part of a vast organism, where every part knew what every other part was doing. The effect on their combat effectiveness was immediate. Human fighters wove through space in patterns that looked chaotic, but were actually perfectly coordinated. When one pilot made an evasive maneuver, 3 others were already moving to cover the gap. When a Zephyrian ship targeted an enemy, human fighters were already in position to exploit the distraction. The Devourer ships began to show signs of confusion. Their perfect formations wavered as they tried to adapt to tactics that seemed random, but produced coordinated results. "Target the lead ship," Queen Veltara's voice came through the link. "If we can disrupt their command structure, the others may lose coordination." Marcus found himself part of a complex attack pattern involving dozens of ships. His fighter, along with 5 others, approached the massive Devourer command ship from different angles, while Zephyrian heavy cruisers provided covering fire. The timing had to be perfect. "Now," Lila said simply. Marcus triggered his weapons at exactly the same moment as the other human pilots, their combined fire striking the same point on the Devourer's hull, just as the Zephyrian weapons overloaded its shields. The result was a chain reaction that tore through the massive ship's core systems. The command ship began to drift, its dark hull flickering with internal explosions. Around it, the other Devourer vessels seemed to hesitate, their perfect coordination disrupted. "Press the advantage," Commander Thexvar's voice came through the link. Marcus was surprised to hear something like respect in the Zephyrian's tone. "All ships concentrate fire on the damaged vessels." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human and Zephyrian ships moved together as if they were dancers performing a deadly ballet. Every human pilot's instinct for improvisation was enhanced by Zephyrian coordination, while every Zephyrian ship's overwhelming firepower was guided by human tactical creativity. When a group of Devourers tried to break through to attack the human colonies directly, they found themselves facing Captain Torres leading a mixed squadron in a maneuver that involved using a gas giant's gravity well to slingshot around and attack from an impossible angle. When the Devourers adapted by sending their fighters in unpredictable swarms, they met Zephyrian ships guided by human pilots who understood exactly how to turn chaos into an advantage. But the real turning point came when Marcus noticed something the massive tactical displays had missed. "Lila," he called through the link, "look at their energy patterns. Every time they adapt to our tactics, they draw power from their main weapons to run the adaptation algorithms." There was a pause as Lila processed this information through both human intuition and Zephyrian computational power. "You're right," she said excitedly. "They're vulnerable for exactly 3.7 seconds during each adaptation cycle. Can you predict when the next cycle will happen?" "Better than that," Lila replied. "I can force them to adapt on command. All ships prepare for synchronized chaos pattern." What followed was the most beautiful and terrifying display of coordinated randomness Marcus had ever seen. The entire fleet began moving in patterns that looked completely insane, but were actually carefully calculated to force the Devourers to adapt continuously. Every 3.7 seconds, just as the enemy ships drew power for their adaptation algorithms, the combined fleet struck with everything they had. The effect was devastating. One by one, the massive Devourer ships began to fall. Their perfect coordination, which had been their greatest strength, became a weakness when faced with an enemy that could be both chaotic and coordinated at the same time. The final Devourer ship was destroyed just as the twin suns of Kepler 442b rose on the horizon of New Hokkaido. Marcus sat in his fighter, hands shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline, watching the debris field that had once been an unstoppable fleet. "All ships, this is Princess Lysiandra." Lila's voice came through the link, and Marcus could hear the exhaustion in it. "The Devourer fleet has been neutralized. Return to base for medical evaluation and debriefing." 2 hours later, Marcus stood on the landing platform of New Hokkaido, watching as human and Zephyrian crews worked together to repair their ships. The barriers that had existed between the species just days ago seemed to have evaporated. Pilots from both fleets shared stories, exchanged technical knowledge, and celebrated their shared victory. Queen Veltara approached him, no longer looking like the imposing empress who had arrived to reclaim her daughter. She looked tired, humbled, and strangely hopeful. "Dr. Chen," she said formally, then paused. "Marcus, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not seeing what you had given my daughter, and what she had become because of it." The Queen looked out at the mixed crews working together. "When I arrived here, I thought I was reclaiming a lost princess. Instead, I found a bridge between worlds." Lila emerged from the Heartspire's landing craft, still wearing the neural interface headset that had allowed her to coordinate the battle. She looked exhausted but proud. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked as she approached. "Like I finally understand who I am," she said, smiling. "I'm not just Zephyrian or just human. I'm both, and that makes me stronger, not weaker." Queen Veltara looked at her daughter with new eyes. "You fought magnificently today, both as a princess and as a human." "I fought as myself," Lila corrected gently, "for the people I love." The Queen was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "I have a proposal. The galaxy has seen today that cooperation between our species produces results that neither could achieve alone. Perhaps it is time for a new kind of alliance." "What did you have in mind?" Marcus asked. "A permanent diplomatic colony here, on Kepler 442b. A place where humans and Zephyrians can work together, learn from each other, and prepare for future threats." The Queen looked at Lila. Led by someone who understands both cultures. Lila's eyes widened. You want me to be an ambassador? I want you to be yourself, the Queen said simply. A bridge between worlds, just as you were today. You can keep your human family, your human name, your human values, but you can also explore your Zephyrian heritage and help forge a new future for both our peoples. Marcus felt his chest tighten with pride. This was more than he had ever dared hope for. Not just Lila staying with him, but both of them becoming part of something larger. What do you think, Dad? Lila asked. Marcus looked at the mixed crews still working together in the landing area, then at the Queen who had traveled across the galaxy to find her daughter, and ended up finding something even more valuable, and finally at Lila herself, no longer lost between two worlds, but standing as a bridge connecting them. I think, he said slowly, that a frontier doctor is about to have the most interesting retirement in human history. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his new medical facility in the joint human-Zephyrian colony. Through the windows, he could see children from both species playing together in the courtyard, while their parents worked on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. Lila entered the office, wearing formal diplomatic robes but still carrying herself with the confidence he had helped instill in her. How was the council meeting? He asked. Productive. The mining consortium wants to establish 3 new joint facilities, and the Zephyrian Science Division wants to collaborate on a new medical research project. She paused, smiling. They specifically requested a human doctor to lead it. Marcus laughed. I suppose I can't stay retired forever. You know, Lila said, settling into a chair across from his desk. When